thank you, Amy, Ellen, for organizing this. And it's a wonderful, already a wonderful series of presentations. And I have a change of pace. I'm going to offer a change of pace and a change of medium. And I'm going to be speaking really about the part of what Amy talked about mentioned at the beginning, was making human systems work for natural systems, that problem, which was part of what was the March conference that the Greater Boston Group at Sierra Club organized about, which was using ecosystems and human systems working together, and drawing some examples, talking about some work that I've done on some of the front lines of getting municipal initiatives and activism to get policymakers to pay attention to ecosystems and the ecological crisis. Actually, in my neighborhood, in Inman Square, I won't go into that, but I think there are some lessons from that are worth, that we could learn from. And really what I want to address the problem is, this is a wonderful audience you have here tonight, but there are probably, for every one of you, there's probably 500 or 1,000 people who should be hearing this information, and that problem, and it's a real problem. We ran into it in a major way at Inman Square when we were advocating our case, and I want to sort of hop back to the sort of at a conceptual level what the problem is that we're dealing with when we're dealing with human systems and ecosystems, because there are some important similarities between them that perhaps allow us to think in creative and new ways about how to adapt our human systems to work for and with the ecosystems. And these are some ideas that we came up with the forum that I helped to organize. They're based on the wonderful work of Tom Wessels. If you don't know it, everybody should have it. I think it's a classic, The Myth of Progress Toward a Sustainable Future. And the problems that we are facing in Alewife and everywhere in our environment, but especially in Alewife is a perfect example of it, is that they're complex systems, as Sarah Slaughter has clearly explained. And the thing about complex systems is they tend to be nested. And here's what, I just want to read a couple of paragraphs from Tom Wessels about this, because I think it might help trigger some thinking about how to go forward with these, getting this word out. Complex systems tend to be nested one within another and are separated by fuzzy boundaries. These are boundaries that allow for the flow of energy, materials, and information between larger and smaller scale systems, but maintain each system's integrity. Biological and political systems demonstrate these attributes well. So you can think of the Great Swamp, for example. Within an ecosystem, are individual organisms that take in energy, matter, and information from the ecosystem. For humans, our digestive system, lungs, skin, and sensory organs form our fuzzy boundaries. Within each of us lie our cells, which have a membrane to function as their fuzzy boundary to regulate the movement of molecules into and out of the cell. Within each cell are organelles such as mitochondria that also separate themselves from the rest of the cell by a membranous fuzzy boundary. All of these represent a series of nested, complex biological systems. The organism in the ecosystem and the ecosystem in the biosphere. Now we can see the same nestedness in our political systems. Towns and cities are nested in states, which comprise the United States and one of almost 200 countries on the planet. All these different levels of political organizations have spatial boundaries that give them integrity and laws that govern how those boundaries operate. And what we see, because materials, energy, and information cross into and out of towns, states, and countries, they too have fuzzy boundaries like nested biological systems. And what we see in the problem we have is that all people who live here, whether it's in the Great Swamp or in the Inman Square area, we need to create a sense of being a system, a human system that matches the ecological system and understands the ecological process. What we did, and what we discovered in Inman Square was that we were reaching the choir, as you are here today, but we weren't reaching everybody who had to be reached, because this is a problem of the whole. You can't address these problems just with a handful of people, of activists. And so and it really comes down to the question of information. Transmission of information. Our systems for transmitting information are in a bad state of repair. Social media, and we don't have a local media. The television doesn't work at these scales, whether it's at a neighborhood scale or at the scale of the Great Swamp. And what we did was we decided we'd put out a newspaper, a community newspaper, an Inman Square newspaper. And it's an example of what I would just put it out here as an example of something, as a way of building on this forum and getting this story out. I think I've already heard 2 or 3 stories that would make great items for a Great Swamp Gazette or a quarterly or whatever you might want to call it. I brought paper copies of the Inman Square Dispatch for you to look at, just as an example. I wouldn't call it necessarily a model, but I would say that the effect of this, it really transformed our campaign. If we'd done it 2 weeks earlier, I think the outcome of the vote in City Council might have been different. All kinds of people came forward who got this because we got out thousands of copies, because the cost is very low. You could cover probably every household in the Great Swamp for less than $1,000 with 8-page color printing. It takes some work, but it was transformative. And I just offer it as an example of how you might get the word out from this wonderful forum. The store, Eric, there's even an example. If you look at it here, I hand out copies. I don't know whether I brought quite enough, but if you just look at it across the bottom, there's a history timeline where many of Eric's slides could just go right across the bottom of the page. We did many of the issues are similar that we were dealing with, and so I just put it as there for your consideration going forward. And with that, I'll turn it over to go back to some of the science and the